Air passengers will no longer need to have a negative COVID-19 test result to enter the country. The rule was introduced in December as part of efforts to curb the spread of Omicron here. Anybody arriving here from overseas needed to have proof of either a negative PCR or an antigen test, a professional antigen test, in fact, before arrival. However, with the Omicron strain now thought to be responsible for 95% of our cases, the Cabinet has agreed to scrap the rule. Eoghan Corry of Air and Travel joins me now. Good morning to you, Eoghan.
Good morning, Fran.
And many thanks for coming on with us today, and a happy New Year to you as well. How important is this decision, Eoghan?
It's very significant. Pre-departure testing was required for everyone arriving in Ireland. It was troublesome. It wasn't the biggest deal in the world because antigen was accepted. But we were in a very small club of countries that required that for travel within the European Union. Travel outside the European Union is quite different. But travel within the European Union, ourselves and Portugal were the first to introduce testing requirements. It was probably designed to keep Omicron away, and the Cabinet decided that it hadn't served that purpose. It was probably not going to in the first place. Only 2 countries introduced testing for travel within the European Union.
Did it put off people from making a decision to travel, Eoghan?
It didn't really, to a great extent. What it did was it affected some of the short trips, particularly Premiership soccer, things like that.
Yes.
People who were going over, I know people who were paying like €20 each way to get to Newcastle for an event in England. They sort of looked at the cost of the test and said that. But not a lot of people are travelling in December. December is really, really quiet time for travel. January isn't that busy either. So the overall effect on travel was more an inconvenience for those who had to travel rather than putting people off.
What about unvaccinated people who may be travelling?
Testing still required. Always has been. I mean, the digital COVID certificate on your phone, that QR code will give your vaccination status. And that's really what's happened here, Fran. Since July, when the digital COVID certificate was brought in, it was designed to move the emphasis away from point of origin to vaccination status. Everybody within the European Union being treated, their restrictions, if they are there, being put on because of vaccination status rather than where they got on board the flight.
Is it inevitable that you'll have to show proof of a booster in the future? Because Micheál Martin was talking about that where hospitality is concerned. So what about where travel is concerned?
Very much, because the EU decided in December that there is a best buy date or a sell by date on the second vaccine, according to which product you're using, and it's 9 months. Now, as of February the 1st, European Union countries will be looking for evidence of the booster if it's 9 months since your second vaccination. Now, remember, it isn't that everyone is being sought the booster from February the 1st, but from February the 1st, they'll start dating that second vaccination and start looking for the boost. Now, most Irish people, health workers, have already run out on this. The 9 months has already run out, but a lot of the vaccination was done June, July. So it's around Patrick's Day that when you're travelling, they'll start looking for evidence of the booster. As of yesterday, there was no sign that the Irish government would update their database, but that was decided yesterday that from this week, the booster will be fed into the data. And by January the 15th, they say everybody's booster will be on the QR code. The joy of this, Fran, is the QR code doesn't have to be updated. The same QR code serves the same purpose. It's just the information that's being updated.
Oh, very interesting. So the very same codes that we have now will be updated.
Exactly.
Right, very good.
Now, the code won't be updated. The code stays the same. It's like a website, a QR code for a website.
Yes.
The website can be updated, but the QR code just guides you into that, and all your vaccination information will be there.
Very good indeed. When you and I last spoke, the United States had begun to reopen its borders for fully vaccinated visitors, and there was a plethora of people wanting to go, and the planes were full and all of that. What's the situation now?
In fact, it fell off fairly quickly from that first rush. And there's a great deal. There's a little bit of hesitancy about long haul in general, and about the United States, which would be a big market for us. The flights are still in place. This is really important. The very ambitious schedule that Aer Lingus put in place for next summer is still there, as is Ryanair's for travel within Europe. And it's easier to name the routes that aren't flying that we had in 2019 than it is the ones that are. The ones that we've lost are Hartford in Connecticut, Miami and Minneapolis and Montreal in Canada. The rest are all scheduled to go. But what the two airlines have done is put on fairly robust seat sales in December and through January, and they're testing the level of consumer interest in these routes. If by February, March, the bookings aren't coming in, they might start cutting back. But at the moment, we have a very ambitious schedule for 2022. Everything should happen properly in 2022, as we expect.
Well, hopefully so indeed. The front of the Irish Daily Mail today, saying, that spring and summer should be good for us. So I presume that if people take that on board, they'll begin to book.
The real thing was what would happen in terms of that booster, and that was cleared up, thankfully, yesterday.
Yes.
Because as of January 17, France will be introducing it for things like ski lifts and events or attractions like Disneyland Paris. So when they start kind of scanning the QR code, they were looking for evidence of a booster in that QR code. That was going to kick in at international borders from February the 1st. So as it was, I was told that there were no plans to add the booster to the Irish QR code, but that seems to have changed, and Ireland has aligned itself with what's been happening elsewhere in Europe.
Would you give some advice to our listeners, those of our listeners who might be planning on a holiday or maybe even thinking about it, Eoghan? What would you say to them at this point?
At this point, have a look at your sale fares. You're getting very, very good value there, and you've got very good booking conditions, more generous from Aer Lingus than from Ryanair, because Ryanair give you short notice. They come and put it at the end of the month. But it means that you can book and you can push back the flight should anything horrible happen with COVID. And it's produced a few surprises for us already.
Very good. Those holiday shows as well, they were rescheduled to March. How important are they, the ones in Dublin and Belfast and all of that?
They're a big deal in terms of decision making. People go in and get a good flavour of what is happening and what their options are for the summer travel. That's pretty important because it's very hard in every aspect of life to get to actually meet somebody, get a face-to-face contact.
Yes.
Too easy to get someone to pick up a phone rather than press button 1 for here and press button 2 for that there. So the holiday shows were pretty big for that and the decision-making process. The reason they've gone back to March is not many holiday decisions being made in January. If you were to go back a few years ago, 30%, Fran, of all the holiday bookings were done during January. But that is certainly not happening this year. And there is a sort of a sense, it's an instinct, it's not based on anything measurable or any metrics, that March will be when people will make their summer holiday decision. That's very bad news for holiday companies, bad news for airlines, because they like lots of notice. But it's very good news for consumer because airlines will have to keep their prices a little bit lower than they normally would because the shorter lead-in time.
Eoghan, we always appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming on with us. Thank you. Thank you, and bye-bye to you. That's Eoghan Corry there of Air and Travel magazine. 1800 938 007. Text WhatsApp 083 311 3311. All right, lots coming into us on text and WhatsApp. We'll have a look at that and I'll bring it to you in just a little while.
Tip FM's Tip Today with Fran Corry.
In association with Slattery's of Pecan, Tipperary's main Peugeot dealer. Slattery's Garage Pecan, the name you can trust for over 50 years in the Premier County. Slattery'sGarage.ie.